Here's what nobody tells you about getting into the wrong car at 2 a.m. It doesn't feel wrong. It feels like relief. It feels like warmth after rain, like a door that opened exactly when you needed it to. What feels wrong comes later, when the man already sitting in the back seat looks down at the blood soaking through your scrubs, looks back up at your face, and doesn't ask a single question. The blood on her scrubs was just the beginning. Everything that follows is the part that will keep you up at night. Subscribe and stay close. This story moves fast, and it does not slow down for latecomers. The back door of the black car swung open before Lainey emerged. She didn't think twice. It was 2 a.m. The rain was coming sideways. Her feet hurt in ways she didn't have names for yet. And the rideshare app on her cracked phone said driver arriving with a little blue that had been arriving for 11 minutes. When a sleek black car idled right at the hospital exit with its door already open, she got in. The warmth hit her first. Then the silence. Not the silence of an empty car. The silence of a man who had decided not to speak yet. Lainey pulled the door shut behind her, shook rain from her braids, and looked up. The man sitting on the other side of the back seat was not her rideshare driver. He was Korean, somewhere in his early 30s, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that didn't blink the way normal people's eyes blinked. He was watching her the way a person watches something unexpected, not with surprise exactly, but with the particular stillness of someone recalculating. His jacket was dark. His hands were folded in his lap. A second man sat in the front, broad shoulders, eyes already on her in the rearview mirror. Nobody said anything for 3 full seconds. Then the man beside her looked down. At her scrubs. At the dark stains spreading from her left sleeve down to her wrist. "That's a lot of blood," he said. His voice was calm, almost bored, the way a person sounds when they have seen worse. Lainey looked down at herself. She had forgotten. 12-hour shift in the pediatric emergency ward, a 4-year-old who had come in with a ruptured spleen after a fall from a 3rd-floor balcony. And somewhere in the scramble of that surgery, she had taken a splash that she'd meant to clean up but never got to. She had been too tired. She had just wanted to go home. "It's not mine," she said, which was the most important thing. The man held her gaze. "I know. This isn't my car. I know that too." She reached for the door handle. The man in the front seat, the broad one, turned around, and she felt the weight of his attention land on her like something physical. Not a threat, exactly. Just a wall. "The rain is very bad," the man beside her said. Not an argument. Just a fact. Lainey looked out the window. He was right. The rain had gone from sideways to diagonal, the kind of rain that turns streets into rivers and makes everything look like the world is ending. The hospital exit behind her was already a blur of white light and gray water. She turned back. "Who are you?" she asked. He considered this. Like it was a question with more than one right answer. "You," he said finally. "My name is Yusuk." "Lainey," she said, because it felt strange not to after he'd given her something. "Where are you going, Lainey?" She told him the address. He said something short and quiet to the driver in Korean. The car pulled out. Lainey was not, by nature, a person who made reckless choices. She had grown up in Accra, raised by a mother who ran a pharmacy and a father who taught secondary school biology, and she had learned early that the world had a pattern to it, a cause and an effect, and if you paid attention you could mostly stay on the right side of it. She had paid attention all the way through medical school in Cape Town, through her internship in Johannesburg, and through the last 14 months in Daejeon, South Korea, where she had taken a pediatric residency post that most of her classmates said was insane to accept. She had paid attention to everything. Except, apparently, to which car she got into at 2 a.m. She kept her bag in her lap. She watched the city slide past the window. Daejeon at this hour was a mix of glowing convenience store signs and rain-darkened streets, the Han River Bridge lit up orange in the distance. She was not scared, exactly. But she was aware. Every part of her was paying attention now. "You work at the hospital," Yusuk said. It was not a question. Pediatric emergency. He looked at her sleeve again. "Long night. They're all long nights." Something almost moved in his expression. Not a smile. More like a note he was writing to himself. "You're not from here," he said. "Neither are you technically." "Daejeon isn't exactly." She stopped. Because the look on his face told her, with no words at all, that she was wrong about that. That this city, specifically, was exactly where he was from. "My family has been in Daejeon for 4 generations, he said. "Right. Sorry. Don't be." He looked out his window. "You're observant. You just had incomplete information." Lainey studied the side of his face. The way he held himself, too still, too deliberate, was the posture of someone who had trained themselves never to react. She had seen that posture once before, in a documentary about crisis negotiators. And once, in a patient's father who turned out to have spent 15 years in a maximum security facility. She didn't ask. The car slowed. She looked up and realized they were not on the route to her apartment. "This isn't the way," she said. "There's flooding on Chungmuaro," the driver said from the front. First words he'd spoken. His Korean carried a rough edge. Alternate route. Lainey pulled out her phone, opened the map. The main road was indeed marked red. Flooding reported, detour advised. The alternate route the driver was taking curved right and then looped back. It would add maybe 10 minutes. She put her phone away. "You checked," Yusuk observed. "I always check." This time, something did move in his expression. Just briefly. "Good," he said. And it sounded like he meant it. They were 3 blocks from her apartment when the second car appeared. It came out of a side street fast, too fast for weather like this, and pulled up alongside them. Lainey could see it in the window reflection before she could see it directly. A gray vehicle, tinted glass, riding close. The driver, his name, she would later learn, was Daejeon, said one sharp word in Korean, and the car accelerated. The gray car kept up. "Get down," Yusuk said. No panic in his voice. Just instruction. "I'm sorry, what?" "Lainey." He said her name with the same calm he had used for everything else. "Please get down." She didn't get down. She was a doctor. Getting down was not her first instinct. Her first instinct was to look at the problem and understand it. So she turned and looked through the rear windshield and saw the gray car accelerating to overtake them. And then she saw, in the flash of a streetlight, that the window of the gray car was lowering. She got down. The next few seconds were a pattern of sound and motion. The roar of the engine, Daejeon's voice cutting sharp commands, the car taking a hard right turn that threw Lainey against the door, and then a series of loud cracks that she recognized, because she had grown up in a city where you learned early what that sound was. Then they were moving fast, very fast, through back streets she didn't recognize, and the gray car was not behind them anymore. Lainey sat up slowly. She was not hurt. She checked herself, the habit of a doctor, systematic, top to bottom. Not hurt. She looked at Yusuk. He was watching her. He had something dark on his left hand. She registered it clinically before she registered it emotionally. A long cut across his palm, still fresh, bleeding in a thin line down toward his wrist. "You're injured," she said. "It's minor. Let me see it." "It's minor, Lainey." "I am a doctor," she said, with the specific firmness of someone who has had to repeat that sentence to patients who did not want to be helped. "Let me see your hand." A pause, longer than it needed to be. Then he turned his hand over. She took it, without thinking, without ceremony. The way she took every patient's hand, as a thing that needed care, not as a thing that belonged to a person she was afraid of. She opened her bag, found the small emergency kit she always carried. Every doctor she knew carried one, and started cleaning the cut with practiced efficiency. It was a glass cut, she thought. From the window, probably. Not deep. Would not need stitches if she wrapped it right. She wrapped it right. The whole time, Yusuk did not say anything. He watched her work with that same recalculating expression. Like he was seeing something he hadn't expected and wasn't sure yet what to do with it. "Done," she said. She let go of his hand. "Thank you. You need to tell me what just happened." He looked at her for a long moment. "You got into the wrong car," he said. "I figured that part out on my own. You should go home, Lainey. Daejeon will take you. You should forget this happened. Someone just..." She lowered her voice, though she didn't know why. "Someone just shot at this car." "Yes. And you're telling me to forget it. I'm telling you it has nothing to do with you." She looked at the bandage on his hand. Then at his face. "If it had nothing to do with me," she said slowly, "then why are you looking at me like you're worried?" He didn't answer. Which was, she realized, its own kind of answer. Daejeon dropped her at her building. Yusuk told her, before she got out, that she should not tell anyone about the car, the route, the men in gray. He said it simply, not as a threat but as a request, and somehow that made it worse. She went up to her apartment on the 7th floor, changed out of her blood-stained scrubs, made herself a cup of ginger tea she didn't drink, and sat at her kitchen table for a very long time. She was a doctor. She understood systems. She understood how the body worked because she understood how each part connected to every other part. And right now, every part of her was telling her the same thing. This was not over. She was right. 3 days passed. Lainey worked her shifts. She saved a 9-year-old who came in with a collapsed lung after a bad bicycle fall. She argued with a senior consultant about the correct dosage for a 2-year-old with a severe infection, and won, and that small victory lasted her most of the day. She ate rice from the convenience store across from the hospital at midnight and called her mother in Accra on her lunch break and said everything was fine. She did not think about Yusuk. She thought about him constantly, not in a romantic way, or at least she told herself it wasn't that. She thought about him the way she thought about difficult cases, as a problem she didn't have enough information to understand yet. His face, his voice, the way he said her name, the bandage on his hand, and the absolute lack of surprise in his expression when the shooting started. On the 4th day, there was a man outside the hospital. Not threatening, not obviously anything. He was sitting on a bench near the parking structure, reading something on his phone, dressed in a plain jacket. But he had been there when she arrived at 7 in the morning, and he was still there when she stepped out for 15 minutes at noon. And when she looked at him, directly, deliberately, he looked back for exactly 1 second and then back at his phone. She was being watched. The question was, by whom? She found out 2 hours later when the man stood up, walked to the hospital entrance, and handed the front desk receptionist a folded note. And the receptionist, looking mildly confused, brought it to Lainey in the staff room. The note had 4 words on it. "We need to talk." And below that, a number. She stared at it for longer than she should have. Then she took out her phone. He picked up before the second ring. "You were watching me," she said. "I was protecting you," Yusuk said. His voice was the same, that particular measured calm. "There is a difference. Not from where I'm standing." A pause. "The men in the gray car. They identified you. They know you were in my vehicle." The ginger tea feeling came back. That cold weight in her stomach that she had been pretending wasn't there for 3 days. "Why would they care about me?" "Because they think you saw something. I was lying on the floor of a car." "They don't know that." Lainey pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose. "What did they think I saw?" "That is a longer conversation. Can you meet me tonight?" "Absolutely not." "Lainey, you want me to voluntarily walk into a situation that already got me shot at. You understand why I might need a moment with that. The location is safe. Public. You choose it." She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. 7 o'clock, she said. "The tea house on Yunhangaro. The one with the yellow sign. I'll be sitting where I can see the door." "I'll find you," he said, and hung up. He came alone. She had half expected Daejeon or 2 other large men in dark clothing. Instead it was just Yusuk, in a plain gray jacket and dark trousers, looking like someone's older brother who had taken a wrong turn into a tea house. He spotted her immediately. She had picked a corner seat, back to the wall, facing the entrance, which he seemed to notice and approve of in the same small way he had approved of her checking the map. He sat down across from her. The tea house was quiet. 2 university students near the window, an older couple sharing a pot of barley tea, soft traditional music from a speaker in the corner. Safe. Public. Just as promised. "Talk," Lainey said. He talked. His family, 4 generations in Daejeon, as he had said, ran an organization that, on paper, managed import logistics and a chain of seafood restaurants. Off paper, they ran considerably more. He used careful language. He did not say crime or mafia or any of the words she had already landed on herself. But she was a doctor. She had been trained to hear what people said between the things they actually said. The gray car belonged to a rival family, the Wu family, based in the industrial district east of the river. The 2 families had maintained an uneasy arrangement for years. 3 weeks ago, someone had broken that arrangement. A shipment had disappeared. Money had gone missing. Someone had been blamed, wrongly, Yusuk said, with the quietest kind of certainty, and now the Wu family was responding. "They shot at your car because of a business disagreement," Lainey said flatly. "In their world, business disagreements take a certain shape. And I was in the car." "You were in the car." She wrapped both hands around her cup of tea. "So what do you want from me?" He looked at her steadily. "I want you to be careful. I want you to let Daejeon drive you to and from the hospital until this is resolved. And I want you to understand that you are not in danger as long as..." "As long as what?" He paused. "Just slightly. As long as you stay connected to me. They won't touch anyone under my protection." Lainey sat with that. Under my protection. She turned the phrase over the way she turned a diagnosis over. looking for the places it didn't fit. You're telling me the safest thing I can do is stay close to the most dangerous person involved in this situation. Yes, that is a terrible plan. I know, and you're asking me anyway. I'm telling you the truth. What you do with it is your choice. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, something in his expression slipped slightly. Not much, just a fraction. The recalculating look became something a little less calculated. I did not intend for you to be in that car. I did not intend for you to be involved in any of this. But you are, and I would rather you were safe. The music played softly. Lainey thought about the note. The man on the bench. The 4-year-old with the ruptured spleen who had made it through surgery and would go home to his family next week. I have conditions, she said. He waited. I go to work. Every shift. Daejeon takes me there and picks me up, but he waits outside. He does not come in, he does not interfere with my job, and nobody at that hospital knows anything about any of this. Agreed. I carry my own phone, my own money, and I make my own decisions. I am not, she picked the word carefully, property. Something moved in his expression again. You are not property, he said. Simply and completely. And when this is over, it's over. I go back to my life, and you go back to yours. He held her gaze for a long moment. When this is over, he said, yes. It was not over quickly. The next 2 weeks moved in a strange double rhythm. Lainey's days at the hospital, which were urgent and exhausting and full of small human emergencies, and then the evenings, which had a different kind of tension. Daejeon drove her everywhere. He was enormous and nearly silent and had, she discovered, a weakness for children's animated films. She found him watching one on his phone in the parking structure one evening, and he went so red she almost felt bad for him. Yusuk texted occasionally. Brief things. Is Daejeon behaving? Heard there was a multi-vehicle accident near your hospital. Are you all right? The messages had the quality of a man who was not used to asking questions and was learning slowly how to do it. She answered them. Briefly. Clinically. But she thought about them afterward. The complication had a name. Woo Jae-in. She met him on a Wednesday evening when Daejeon was late. A rare thing, explained later by a flat tire and a creative string of Korean words she was glad she couldn't translate. And she was standing outside the hospital entrance when a car pulled up that she did not recognize. The window came down. He was smiling. That was the first thing, a wide, easy smile, the kind that looked like it had been worn a lot and worked. He was around 30, handsome in a way that was immediately obvious, and just as immediately suspicious to Lainey, who had spent enough time in hospitals to know that easy charm was often a thing people used instead of honesty. Dr. Lainey, he said, I'm a friend of Yusuk's. Daejeon had a small, car situation. He asked me to cover. Lainey looked at him. Then at the car. Then at her phone, where there was no message from Yusuk. He asked you to cover, she repeated. Yes. Still smiling. He would have texted me. The smile held. Maybe he forgot. He doesn't forget things. A pause. Then the smile shifted, just slightly. Became a different kind of smile. More real in a way, but also less comfortable. You're careful, he said. I'm a doctor. So I've heard. He tilted his head. I'm Woo Jae-in. I think you may have heard of my family. The cold weight was back. She did not move toward the car. She did not move away. She simply stood very still and said, What do you want? Just to talk. He held up a hand, harmless gesture, open palm. I'm not here to threaten you. I promise. I think you deserve to know the full story. About the shipment. About who actually took it. His expression did something complicated. About who Yusuk actually is. A long beat of silence. I know who he is, she said. Do you? Woo Jae-in's voice was soft now. Careful. He told you about the business disagreement, right? The missing shipment. The families. Did he tell you who made it disappear? A pause. Did he tell you about the other doctor? Lainey said nothing. Her name was Lee Soyeon, Woo Jae-in said. She was an ER surgeon. She got involved with Yusuk 2 years ago. She found out things she wasn't supposed to know. He let the silence do the work. She left Korea. Very quickly. Very quietly. His eyes held hers. I thought you should know. Headlights. Daejeon's car coming fast around the corner, pulling up hard. Woo Jae-in's window went up. His car pulled away smoothly, calmly, unhurried. The car of a man who believed he had already done what he came to do. Daejeon got out, saw her face, and said something in Korean that she was pretty sure was an apology. She got in the car. She didn't say anything all the way home. That night she sat with her tea again, actually drank it this time, and turned the name over in her head. Lee Soyeon, an ER surgeon, got involved with Yusuk. Left very quickly. She was a doctor. She did not diagnose on incomplete information. But she was also honest with herself, and the honest truth was this: she liked him. She had not wanted to. She had built a careful clinical distance from the moment she had cleaned the cut on his hand, and it had worked beautifully right up until the moment she realized she was checking her phone for his texts in between patient rounds. She texted him now. "Who is Lee Soyeon?" The response came in 40 seconds, which was either the response time of a man with nothing to hide or a man who had been expecting the question. "Where did you hear that name?" "Woo Jae-in came to the hospital tonight. Daejeon was late. 3 minutes of nothing. Then her phone rang. "Are you safe?" he said. First thing, before hello. "I'm home. I'm fine." Answer the question. A long pause. She could hear him breathing, steady, controlled, but something underneath it that was less steady. "Lee Soyeon was my father's doctor. She treated him for a heart condition 2 years ago. She became aware of certain details about our family. When the Wu family found out she knew, they threatened her. I arranged for her to leave safely. A beat. She is in Vancouver. She is fine. She has a family." Lainey sat with this. "Woo Jae-in told me she left because of you. Woo Jae-in told you what he needed you to believe. How do I know the difference?" Silence. "You don't," Yusuk said. "Not yet. I can't make you trust me. I can only tell you the truth and let you decide." Another pause, and then quieter. "But I need you to know that I am aware of exactly how unfair it is that you are in this position. You got into the wrong car. None of this should have touched you." The word "should" was doing a lot of work in that sentence. She knew it. She thought he knew it too. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said and hung up. She should have slept. She didn't. She was at her laptop at 1 a.m., running a search on Lee Soyeon, Daejeon surgeon, and finding nothing. No news articles. No social media. Nothing in the hospital records she had even theoretical access to. Either the woman was extraordinarily private, or someone had been extraordinarily thorough about making sure she didn't exist online. Both possibilities were unsettling for different reasons. She was still at the laptop when a text came. Not from Yusuk. From a number she didn't recognize. The real reason the Wu family is angry isn't the shipment. Ask him what happened on March 14th. Ask him about the agreement he broke, not the Wu's. Him. Lainey stared at the screen. She typed back, "Who is this?" No response. The message sat there like a stone thrown into still water, making rings that kept going. She asked him the next morning. Not over text. She called him, because she wanted to hear his voice when he answered, and said, "What happened on March 14th? The silence was different this time. Not the silence of a man deciding how much to say. Shorter. Sharper. Like something had caught. "Where did you hear that?" he said. "Unknown number. Last night. Someone wanted me to ask you." A long exhale. "Someone is playing you, Lainey." "Maybe. But I'm asking you directly, and I want a direct answer." Another pause. Then, March 14th was when I made a choice that the Wu family considers a betrayal. I had an arrangement with them. When I found out what their shipment actually contained, a pause careful, I made sure it didn't arrive. Her mind was already running the possibilities. Weapons. Drugs. People. What was in the shipment? People, he said. Flat and final. 11 people. Workers who had been promised jobs in Europe. They were being moved without documentation, without any protection, in conditions that were, he stopped. I couldn't let it happen. Lainey was very quiet. You destroyed the arrangement to protect 11 strangers, she said slowly. It wasn't, he paused. It wasn't entirely selfless. The Wu family was also using our logistics structure without my knowledge. When I found out what they were carrying, I was angry for multiple reasons. But yes, the people were the first reason. She sat with that. The shape of it. A man who ran an organization that did illegal things, who had drawn a line, his own complicated, imperfect line, and held it. The person who texted me, she said. They wanted me to think you were the villain. Yes. Which means someone in this situation wants me to distrust you. Yes. Which means she worked through it the way she worked through a difficult diagnosis, following each branch. Someone benefits from me walking away from your protection. Someone wants me exposed. Yes, he said, and now his voice had that underneath steadiness back. the thing that sounded like control over something that didn't want to be controlled. Lainey, I need you to do something for me. That depends entirely on what it is. Don't go to work today. I have a shift. I know. I'm asking you to call in. Please. The please landed differently than anything else he had said. Like it cost him something. There is information I've been given about the hospital. About a plan. I need to verify it and I need time. She thought about her shift. The 2 patients she'd scheduled for follow-up. The team that would cover competently because she had trained with competent people. She thought about the word plan. How much time? She said. 4 hours. I'll call in for the morning. If it goes past noon, I'm going to the hospital. Noon, he agreed. The 4 hours became 3. Daejeon picked her up at 8 a.m. and drove her. Not to Yusuk's home or office, which she had been half expecting, but to a small restaurant that hadn't opened yet for the day, tucked into a narrow street in an older part of the city. She could see the Gapcheon River from the window. The morning light on it was pale and gold. Yusuk was already there, at a table with a woman Lainey didn't recognize. The woman was from Eswatini, early 50s, with close-cropped hair and an expression that reminded Lainey of her mother's expression during examinations, like every answer was being scored in real time. She was wearing a jacket with a small government logo on it that Lainey couldn't quite read from the door. Lainey, Yusuk said, standing as she came in, and the formality of it, the small, ordinary gesture, made the situation feel briefly, dizzily normal. This is Agent Josie Ainsley. She's been working a case connected to the Wu family for 18 months. Agent Ainsley looked at Lainey with the assessing eyes of a woman who had learned to assess quickly. Dr. Lainey Maggie. Just Lainey. You've had a very interesting 2 weeks. She gestured to the seat across from her. Sit down. We have things to discuss. The story that Agent Ainsley told was longer and more complicated than any version Lainey had been given, and it rearranged several things she thought she understood. The Wu family was under international investigation. Crime and a network of fraudulent employment agencies operating across 4 countries. The missing shipment that had started this whole conflict had been the Wu's most valuable operation in 2 years, and it had been dismantled not only by Yusuk, but partly because of information he had provided to Agent Ainsley's team 9 months ago. He's been cooperating, Lainey said, looking at Yusuk. Carefully, Agent Ainsley said, and not without his own complications. Mr. Yu is not a saint. His family's business has done things I would arrest him for on a different day. She said this directly to his face, and he received it without reaction. But on this specific matter, his information has been accurate and has protected people who couldn't protect themselves. So the Wus want him gone, Lainey said. The Wus want him gone, and they want his cooperation with us disrupted, and now, Agent Ainsley folded her hands, they have found a more interesting tool. They believe that if they can threaten you, a foreign national, a doctor, someone with no connection to any of this, publicly enough, it will either destabilize Mr. Yu or give them leverage. The room was very quiet. They're going to do something at the hospital, Lainey said. Not a question. We believe so. Possibly today. Agent Ainsley looked at her directly. I won't tell you to be brave, but I want you to understand the situation completely before I ask you anything. You want me to go in, Lainey said. You want me to be visible, so that when they move on me, your team can. We would have people in position at every entrance. You would be. Bait, Lainey said. Silence. She looked at Yusuk. He was looking at the table, which was, she realized, the first time she had seen him look away from something. You don't want me to do this, she said to him. I don't, he said. This was not my idea. But you can't stop them if the Wus try something at the hospital anyway. A pause. No. So whether I agree to this or not, I could be in danger today. Yes. She looked at Agent Ainsley. Then out the window at the river. Pale gold and cold-looking, moving fast with last week's rain. She thought about the 11 people in the shipment. She thought about what it meant to make a choice from a place of information instead of a place of fear. I have a condition, she said. Agent Ainsley raised an eyebrow. My patients come first. If anything disrupts care in that ward, I pull the plug on whatever plan you have, and I prioritize the children. Non-negotiable. Agreed, Agent Ainsley said immediately. And, Lainey looked at Yusuk. I want to hear the rest of it. Everything. Not the careful version. Everything. After today. He looked up from the table. Met her eyes. Everything, he said. She walked into the hospital at 10 a.m. The morning was ordinary in all the ways mornings usually were. The hand sanitizer smell, the distant beeping, the particular light of corridors that never actually changed whether it was day or night. She checked in with the charge nurse, reviewed the overnight notes, visited her 2 follow-up patients. Nothing happened for an hour. Then a man came into the ward. He was not a patient. He was not a family member. She had an instinct for the particular fear and hope expression of parents in a pediatric ward, and he did not have it. He was dressed as a hospital maintenance worker, carrying a toolbox, moving slowly along the corridor toward the supply room. Lainey had been told, if she saw anything wrong, she should keep walking. She should not stop. She should not signal. Agent Ainsley's people would handle it. She kept walking. She went to the nurse's station, picked up a chart, and kept her eyes forward while every part of her peripheral vision tracked the maintenance man's movement. He went into the supply room. He came out again, without the toolbox. She walked to the nearest internal phone and called the extension Agent Ainsley had given her. Said one word, supply room. Then she went back to work. The next 7 minutes were the longest 7 minutes she had experienced since the 4-year-old with the ruptured spleen. She was with a patient, a 6-year-old with a respiratory infection who had decided Lainey's stethoscope was a toy, when she heard voices in the corridor. Calm, professional voices, but moving fast. She kept her attention on the 6-year-old. She explained patiently that the stethoscope was actually for listening to hearts, and did she want to hear her own? The little girl said yes. Lainey put the earpieces in the girl's ears and held the chest piece against her small chest and watched the girl's eyes go wide at the sound of her own heartbeat, going thump, 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 strong and clear and alive. It was the exact right thing to be doing at that moment. In the corridor, Agent Ainsley's people found what the maintenance man had left in the supply room. A small device, later described in the news as a listening and transmission unit, apparently intended to capture sensitive information. The man himself was stopped at the stairwell exit. The toolbox was collected as evidence. No one was hurt. The ward was never disrupted. The news broke fast. By the afternoon, there were reports of a significant operation connected to an international network, multiple arrests, and ongoing investigations. No specific names, that would come later, but Lainey understood the shape of what had happened, and she suspected, watching the careful way Agent Ainsley phrased things in the 3 texts she sent throughout the day, that the shape was much larger than she had seen. She finished her shift. Daejeon was waiting outside. She got in the car. This time she knew whose car it was. She knew exactly whose car it was, and she got in anyway. Mr. Yu is asking if you want to eat something, Daejeon said, eyes on the road. He says you probably haven't eaten. Lainey leaned her head back against the seat. He's right. I haven't. He knows a place with very good doenjang jjigae. Take me there, she said. The restaurant was small and warm and smelled like fermented soybean and sesame and garlic, and it was completely full, and they had to wait at a tiny table near the kitchen while the larger table cleared. Yusuk sat across from her. He looked, for the first time since she'd met him, tired. Not vulnerable. Just tired, the way a person looks when something they have been carrying for a long time has shifted. You were scared today, she said. About me. Yes. She had not expected him to say it that simply. You could have, you don't have to admit that. I know. He looked at her steadily. You asked for everything. I'm starting now. The food came. They ate. And he talked. He talked about his father, a careful man, a complicated man, who had built something that did real harm in the world, but who had also, in his last years, tried to undo some of that harm, and had died before he could finish. He talked about taking over an organization he hadn't entirely wanted and not knowing, for a long time, whether the right thing to do was walk away from it or stay inside it and try to change it. He talked about the moment he found out what was in the Wu family's shipment. A phone call at midnight, a voice reading him a manifest that he had to make himself keep listening to, and the decision he had made in the following hour that had changed everything. He didn't make himself sound good. That was what struck her most. He made himself sound true. What happens now, she said, when he had been quiet for a while. The Wu family's leadership is largely in custody. The rest, he moved his hand slightly. Agent Ainsley's investigation will continue. My cooperation will continue. There are things to untangle that will take a long time. And your family's organization? A pause. That is also something I am still untangling. He looked at her. I told you I would tell you everything. That is everything. I don't have a clean answer. Lainey turned her teacup in her hands. I don't need clean answers. I need honest ones. Then you have it. Across the table, in a small warm restaurant with the sound of the city around them, she looked at him, really looked, and thought about getting into a car at 2 a.m. in the rain, bone-tired, not paying attention. Thought about the particular way the universe had of shoving people into each other's paths at exactly the worst and most inconvenient moment. I said when this was over it was over, she said. You did. I think I was wrong. He was very still. The way he was always still, except now it didn't feel like control. It felt like waiting. I am not a simple person, he said carefully. I know. My life is complicated, she said. I know. I'm a pediatric emergency doctor in a foreign country who got shot at because she got into the wrong car. I have a high tolerance for complicated. Something shifted in his expression. The last thing that had been held there, that final careful distance, moved aside. And what was underneath was simple, actually. Just a man. Tired and trying and watching her like she was something he hadn't expected the world to produce. Okay, he said. Just that. Okay. But the universe, having already shown that it preferred irony to clean endings, had one more thing to say. Her phone lit up. Not a text. A call from Agent Ainsley. Are you with Mr. Yu? Agent Ainsley asked. Yes. I need to tell you both something. A pause that had a particular quality to it. The unknown number that texted you on the night of the 14th. We traced it. And it was one of ours. A member of my own team. Another pause. He had been feeding information to the Wu family for 7 months. His goal was to make you distrust Mr. Yu, to push you away from his protection so that the Wus would have a cleaner shot. Lainey looked across the table at Yusuk. He had heard. The restaurant was quiet enough that Agent Ainsley's voice had carried. He's been detained, Agent Ainsley continued. But you should know, the things he told you about Lee Soyan. The version he gave you. That was constructed. Designed to plant doubt. I know, Lainey said. I figured that out. A brief pause. You figured it out. I'm a doctor. I diagnose on evidence. Right. Agent Ainsley sounded, very slightly, like she was smiling. Right. Stay safe, both of you. This isn't entirely finished. There are parts of the network still active. But the danger you were both facing directly, that part is over. She hung up. The restaurant hummed around them. A traitor in her own team, Lainey said. It seems. And you didn't know. No. He paused. There were people working against this from inside both sides. It was more layered than I knew. She looked at him for a long moment. Are you ever going to stop saying it was more complicated than I knew? His expression did something. And this time she could read it clearly, because she had been studying it for 2 weeks. It was the beginning of a smile. Not a wide or easy smile. Just the real version. Small and surprised and tired and entirely unguarded. Probably not, he said. She laughed. It came out louder than she expected, loud enough that the couple at the next table looked over and then looked away. And Yusuk's almost smile became something slightly more actual. And for a moment the restaurant was just a restaurant, warm and full of the smell of good food. And they were just 2 people sitting across from each other at the end of a very long, very wrong, very unplanned month. 6 months later, Lainey Maggie renewed her residency contract for another year. She was, according to the senior consultant who had previously argued with her about dosage, and now acknowledged, quietly, that she had been right, one of the finest pediatric emergency doctors the department had trained. She still took Daejeon's rides to the hospital sometimes. Not because she needed protection. Because Daejeon had started watching her recommend animated films to sick children and had developed a list of his own. And they had ongoing arguments about which ones were objectively the best. The Wu family investigation made national news twice more, and then stopped making news in the way that large and complicated things stop making news. Not because they were resolved, but because they moved into the slower machinery of courts and testimony and paperwork. Yusuk was part of that machinery, in ways that were careful and slow and ongoing. He also, separately more quietly, shut down 3 components of his family's business that he had identified as causing direct harm. He replaced them with things that employed people legally and paid them correctly and did not require anyone to be afraid. It was slow. It was incomplete. It was not the clean ending of a person who had simply decided to be good and then immediately became good. Lainey, who understood better than most how bodies healed, not in straight lines but in layers, scar tissue and new tissue, and the slow replacement of damaged cells, did not require the clean ending. She required the honesty. She had it. On a Wednesday evening in October, They sat on the banks of the Gapcheon River. The same river she had seen from the restaurant window, pale gold in the early morning, now dark and running fast under the autumn sky. And she told him about a case from the week before, a 7-year-old who had come in not breathing and had left 3 days later walking and laughing and obsessed with the cartoon fish on Laney's stethoscope case. He listened the way he listened to everything, completely, without dividing his attention. Then he told her about a meeting that had gone sideways and a thing he had managed to fix, and she listened the same way. The river ran past them. The city glowed behind them. Somewhere in Daejeon, 11 people whose names she would never know were living lives they wouldn't have had. Somewhere in Vancouver, a woman named Lee Soyeon was raising a family in safety. Laney Maggie, who had gotten into the wrong car at 2 a.m. with blood on her scrubs and rain in her braids and nothing but exhaustion and good instincts, was exactly where she was supposed to be, even if she'd taken the most impossible route to get there. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. Not a text, not a call. An actual physical letter slipped under the door of Laney's apartment sometime between 6 a.m., when she left for the hospital, and 7 p.m., when she came back. Cream envelope, no return address, her name written in careful block letters that suggested someone who was used to being precise. She stood in her doorway holding it for a moment before she went inside. She made tea first. Then she sat down and opened it. The letter was 1 page. Typed, not handwritten. It read, "You don't know me. I know you only by description. A doctor, African, very stubborn, recently connected to the U family situation. I have been watching that situation for longer than anyone involved realizes. There is something that has not come out in the investigation. Something that Agent Ainsley does not know because it happened before her case began. If you want to understand the full picture, not just the part that was shown to you, meet me at the Honbat Arboretum. Saturday, 9 a.m., near the large Zelkova tree at the east entrance. Come alone. Tell no one, including you Suk. If you bring anyone, I will not be there. A friend of the truth." Laney read it twice. Then she made a second cup of tea, which she did not drink, and thought about it for a long time. She did not tell you Suk. She told herself it was because the letter was probably nothing, a provocation, a test, someone trying to stir things up again now that the main noise had died down. She told herself she was going because she was curious and because she was, fundamentally, a person who diagnosed on evidence, and evidence required collection. She told herself a lot of things that Thursday and Friday. On Saturday morning she put on plain clothes, dark coat, flat shoes, and took the bus to the Arboretum instead of calling Daejeon, and walked through the east entrance at 8:55 a.m. with her hands in her pockets and her eyes on everything. The Honbat Arboretum in October was all amber and rust, the ginkgo trees burning yellow at the edges, the paths mostly empty this early. She found the Zelkova tree enormous, ancient, its bark like wrinkled skin, and she waited. At 9:03 a.m., a woman sat down on the bench across from her. She was Korean, perhaps 60, with white hair cut short and reading glasses pushed up on her head. She was dressed for a morning walk, sensible jacket, good shoes. She looked like a retired professor. She looked like someone's grandmother. She was neither of those things. "Dr. Laney," she said. Her voice was quiet and very clear. "You have the advantage," Laney said. "You know my name. My name is Daejeon." She folded her hands in her lap. "I was Yusuk's mother's closest friend. And before that, for 20 years, I worked in the same organization as his father." Laney sat down slowly. "I'm retired now," Daejeon continued, "which is a word that means something different in our world than in yours. I am still connected. I still hear things." She looked at Laney steadily. "I heard what happened at the hospital. I heard what Agent Ainsley found. And I decided that you deserved to know the one piece that Agent Ainsley has not found yet, because it is buried somewhere she is not currently looking." "Why me?" Laney said. "Why not go directly to Agent Ainsley?" Daejeon smiled, a small, patient smile. "Because Agent Ainsley is a law enforcement officer. She must work within her jurisdiction. What I am about to tell you is not illegal, not technically, and it will not help her case. But it matters." She paused. "And because you are the only person in this situation who is entirely clean. You have no side. You have no history here. You got into a car in the rain. Everybody keeps saying that like I did something careless. You did something that changed everything," Daejeon said, simply and without drama. Sometimes those are the same act. What Daejeon told her took 40 minutes and 2 slow circuits of the Arboretum path. It began not with the Wu family and not with the missing shipment, but 12 years earlier, with a decision made by Yu Suk's father, a man named Yu Chong-su, at a point when the family's organization was at its most powerful and most dangerous. Yu Chong-su had had a partner. Not a business partner in the formal sense, more of an equal, a man who had built the organization alongside him from the beginning. His name was Oh Sung-bae, and he and Chong-su had been friends since boyhood, had built their empire together, and had, at a certain moment 12 years ago, arrived at a profound disagreement. Sung-bae had wanted to expand into exactly the kind of operation the Wu family had later run. Chong-su had refused. The disagreement ended their partnership. Sung-bae left, took his portion of the network, and disappeared. Chong-su rebuilt without him. And in the years that followed, as Chong-su aged and grew ill and eventually handed the organization to his son, Sung-bae had simply vanished from the story. He didn't vanish, Baek-yunja said, stopping near a bench to rest for a moment. He rebuilt. Quietly in a different sector, under a different name. He is the reason the Wu family became powerful when they did. He was behind them, not visibly, not in any document Agent Ainsley has, but structurally. He taught them. He funded them in the early years. He was, she searched for the word, the architect. Lainey looked at her. Yu Suk doesn't know this. Yu Suk knows about Oh Sung-bae as a figure from his father's past. He knows they had a falling out. He does not know the full shape of what Sung-bae became. Baek-yunja looked out at the amber trees. His father never told him. I think Chong-su was ashamed that something he had refused to be had been built anyway, by someone he had once loved like a brother. And now Sung-bae is 71 years old, living in Cheonan under a name that is not his own, with no record that connects him to the Wu family or to anything that Agent Ainsley is investigating. She paused. He is not currently doing anything illegal. He withdrew from active involvement years ago. He is technically simply an old man. But, Lainey said, but he still has connections. He still has loyalty from people who came up through his network. And, Baek-yunja looked at her directly. 3 of those people are still inside organizations that touch Yu Suk's life. 2 of them are not a danger. 1 of them is. Who? Baek-yunja told her the name. Lainey went very still. She was on the bus home before she let herself process it. The name Baek-yunja had given her was not a stranger's name. It was Dohun's. She did not panic. She was a doctor. Panic was a thing she had trained against for years, the understanding that panic made you inaccurate and inaccuracy cost lives. She sat on the bus with her hands very still in her lap, and she thought it through. Dohun, who had been with the Yu family for 6 years. Dohun, who drove her to the hospital and watched animated films in the parking structure and blushed when she caught him. Dohun, who had been inexplicably late on the night Wu Jae-in came to the hospital. Baek-yunja had been careful about what she said. Dohun was not an immediate threat, she believed. He was someone who had served 2 loyalties for a long time and had managed to keep them separate. But he reported to Sung-bae. Not frequently, not with damaging information, but regularly. He was a thread, a quiet, long-standing thread connecting the old network to the new one. The question was what to do with the thread. She could tell Yu Suk. She had promised herself honesty. He had promised her honesty. And this felt like the kind of thing that honesty required. She could tell Agent Ainsley, who might or might not be able to act on it. She could do nothing. She looked out the bus window at the city moving past. Ordinary Saturday morning, people with groceries, children with bicycles, the ordinary gorgeous business of a city being alive, and she thought about what Baek-yunja had actually said. He is not currently doing anything illegal. He is technically simply an old man. One of them is a danger. But Baek-yunja had not said Dohun was the danger. She had said one of the 3 was. She had deliberately not specified. Which meant, Lainey pulled out her phone and sent Baek-yunja the number she had called from. You didn't tell me which of the 3 is the danger, she typed. Was that on purpose? The response came 20 minutes later. Yes. Because I'm not certain. I wanted you to have the full picture and make your own assessment. You're a diagnostician. Diagnose. She told Yu Suk everything that evening. She had considered not to, had considered carrying it alone for a few days, gathering more information first. But she remembered what he had said about incomplete information, and she remembered that the whole architecture of whatever they were building between them was honesty, and she was not willing to put a crack in that foundation this early. She met him at his office, The actual office, which she had been to twice before, which looked like a very ordinary import logistics company because it was also, genuinely, an import logistics company. She sat across from him at a table that was covered in documents she deliberately did not look at, and she told him all of it. Baekhyunja. The Arboretum. Oh Sungbei. The name. He listened without interrupting. His face did several things she had learned to read. The slight tightening around his eyes that meant he was processing something difficult. The moment his posture shifted when she said Sungbei's name, and then when she said Daejeon, a stillness so complete it was like watching someone stop time. He said nothing for a long moment. Then, how long have you known? Since this morning. You went alone. The letter said alone. Lainey. I know. She met his eyes. I know. But she wouldn't have come if I'd brought anyone. And she was telling the truth. I could see it. She's not a threat. He looked at the table. Then back at her. Baekhyunja was my mother's best friend for 30 years. She came to my mother's funeral. He stopped. She still loves your family, Lainey said quietly. That's why she came. Not to cause trouble. To make sure you had the information you needed. Another silence. This one different. Not the controlled silence, but the kind of silence a person needs to arrange the new shape of something. Daejeon, he said finally. Almost to himself. She doesn't think he's the direct danger. But he's been reporting to Sungbei. Yes. He stood up. Not in alarm. Just in the way of a person who needs to be vertical to think. He walked to the window, looked out at the street below. 6 years, he said. He has been with me for 6 years. Lainey watched him. She did not fill the silence. The night Woo Jae-in came to the hospital, Yusuk said. The flat tire. I thought about that. It wasn't a coincidence. Probably not. He turned back from the window. His expression had arrived somewhere that was not anger. More like grief with a practical overlay. The expression of a man who had learned long ago that being betrayed by someone you trusted was a type of loss, and loss had to be processed efficiently because the world kept moving. I need to deal with this carefully, he said. I know. Daejeon doesn't. He isn't dangerous in the way the Woos were dangerous. He's a man who has been in an impossible position for a long time. But I cannot, he stopped. Reorganized. I cannot have someone in my circle reporting outward. Not now. Not while the investigation is still active. What are you going to do? He looked at her for a long moment. I'm going to talk to him. Directly. That is what I always should have done with complicated things and didn't always do. A pause. Thank you. For telling me. That's what we said. Yes. He looked at her with that expression she had catalogued now. The one that wasn't a smile but was adjacent to one. It is. The conversation between Yusuk and Daejeon happened the following morning, and Lainey was not there for it. She was in the hospital, which was where she should be doing what she should be doing, a premature infant in the NICU who needed a procedure adjusted, a 7-year-old with an allergic reaction that looked like 3 other things before it resolved into what it actually was. She worked through her shift with the particular focus that came from a problem she couldn't solve by being present at it, which she had learned was most problems in life outside the hospital. Yusuk texted at 2 p.m. It is done. Daejeon is not the danger Baekhyunja was worried about. He confirmed Sungbei. He also confirmed, and this is the part that matters, that Sungbei's third person, the one who is active, is not connected to my organization. He is connected to the Port Authority. I've sent the information to Agent Ainsley. A pause. Then, Daejeon is not with us anymore. He has gone to his sister's family in Jeju. I did not. I chose not to do more than that. He is not a criminal. He is a man who was caught between things he couldn't reconcile. I understand that. Lainey read this twice, standing at the nurse's station. She typed back, How are you? 3 minutes. Ask me tonight. That evening he was quieter than she had ever seen him. Not the controlled quiet, but the quiet of genuine tiredness, the kind that goes down to the bone. They walked along the Gapcheon River, which had become their default place without either of them deciding it. The path was wide enough to walk side by side and lit well enough to see each other's faces and empty enough at this hour for honest conversation. Sungbei, she said, after they had been walking a while. Agent Ainsley is pursuing it. The Port Authority connection gives her a new angle. He walked with his hands in his pockets, watching the river. She thinks she can build a case. Not against Sungbei directly. He is too removed, but against the active person, which dismantles the remaining infrastructure. And Sungbei just lives in Cheonan. He is 71 and ill, apparently. Baekhyunja knew that too. She told you the full picture. He glanced at her. She was right about you. You are a good diagnostician. She said that. She called me this afternoon. After I texted you. He looked slightly caught. She wanted to make sure I had not reacted badly to the information. Had you? A pause. I was angry for about 20 minutes. At the situation. Not at you. He said it carefully, like he was being precise. Never at you. Lainey looked at the river. Your father never told you about Sungbei because he was ashamed. Yes. He was trying to protect you from it. He was protecting himself from saying it aloud. He said this without bitterness, just as fact. I understand why. I don't entirely forgive it, because there were things I could have known sooner that would have helped me navigate this better. But I understand it. They walked in silence for a moment. My mother would have liked you, he said suddenly, quietly, like it came out without full permission. Lainey looked at him. She was practical, direct. She didn't respect people who wasted her time with evasion. He kept his eyes forward. She was a doctor too, actually. Not a medical doctor, a doctor of literature. She translated poetry. Korean into French and back again. A pause. She said all translation was really about finding the word that carried the same weight, not the same sound. That's a beautiful way to think about language. She would have said the same about people. He glanced at her sideways. That you cannot translate a person directly. You can only find what carries the same weight. Lainey considered this. Turned it over. The river ran dark and fast to their left, orange light scattered on its surface from the bridge. I think, she said slowly, that might be the most romantic thing you've said to me. He actually laughed, quiet, genuine, the kind of laugh that happens before a person can arrange their expression. She had heard it twice before, and it was still slightly startling, like a rare bird. That is a low bar, he said. You have room to grow. Agent Ainsley called on a Thursday, 3 weeks later. The Port Authority case is moving, she said, without preamble. She had the phone manner of a person who considered small talk a waste of both parties' time, which Lainey respected immensely. The third person, the active one, has been identified and is currently under surveillance. I expect an arrest within 2 weeks. And Sungbei? A pause. We cannot build a direct case against him with current evidence. He is very carefully positioned. Another pause. He is also, according to medical records that have now come into our possession through legitimate channels, in late-stage renal failure. He has perhaps 6 months. Lainey absorbed this. He built something terrible, she said. And he's going to die without being held accountable for it. Yes, Agent Ainsley said. That happens more than it should. The law is not always the same as justice. She said it like someone who had had to make peace with that fact and had managed it, barely, by staying focused on the things she could change. But the network he built is being dismantled. The people it was hurting are safer. That is not nothing. No, Lainey agreed. That is not nothing. The arrest happened on a Wednesday, 12 days after Agent Ainsley's call, on a cold November morning when the ginkgo trees had gone fully gold and the city looked like it had been painted by someone who loved yellow. Lainey heard about it from Agent Ainsley in a text at 7 a.m., just as she was arriving at the hospital. The text was brief and factual and ended with, "The active threat is neutralized. The case against the Wu network is now substantially complete. I'll be in touch about testimony requirements. Yours will be minimal, likely a written statement only." She stood at the hospital entrance and read it twice. Then she went in, put on her coat, and went to work. What nobody tells you, Lainey thought, during a quiet moment between patients that afternoon. What nobody tells you about the end of something frightening is that the ending is not a sound. It is not a door closing or a bell ringing. It is just a Wednesday, a regular shift. A child who gets better and a child who needs more time and a consultant who is wrong again about a dosage and a cup of coffee that goes cold before she drinks it. The frightening thing ends and the ordinary thing continues, and they overlap for a while, and then one day the frightening thing is just a story you carry, the kind you tell in pieces, to people you trust in warm places. She texted Yusuk at noon. It's done. Did you hear? Yes. Ainsley called this morning. How are you? A minute. Then, come to the river tonight. I want to tell you something. She smiled at her phone in a way that she was glad no one in the staff room saw. I'll be there at 7, she sent back, and went back to work. He was already there when she arrived, standing at the railing above the river with his collar up against the cold, watching the water. The city lit the clouds orange from below. Somewhere across the river, Someone was cooking something with garlic, and it drifted past on the cold air like a small domestic miracle. "You wanted to tell me something," she said, coming to stand beside him. He turned to look at her. The river light caught the side of his face. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what comes next. For the organization. I've spent the last year making it smaller and safer and more legitimate, but," he paused, organizing. "I want to be done with it. Not walk away. I can't simply walk away. There are people employed. There are structures. It has to be done responsibly. But I want to move toward done. Deliberately. With a real endpoint." Lainey watched him. "That's a large thing to decide. I decided it a while ago. I just wanted to tell you. Because you are someone who should know the things I actually decide, not just the things I manage." He looked at the river. "And because," a pause. A longer one. "Because the endpoint I'm building toward is a version of this life that I would not be ashamed for you to be part of. If that is something you would want." The river moved. The city glowed. Somewhere a tram went past on the bridge above them, its lights sliding across the water. Lainey thought about a cream envelope under her door and a woman with white hair in an amber arboretum and a bus ride where she had kept her hands very still in her lap. She thought about blood on her scrubs and a car door that was already open and a man who had said that's a lot of blood in the calmest voice she had ever heard. She thought about translation, about the word that carries the same weight, not the same sound. "I renewed my residency for another year," she said. He looked at her. "And after that year," she continued, "there are fellowship positions I'm eligible for. One of them is here, at the hospital. It would be 2 more years." She paused. "I looked at it last week. It's a good program." "It is a good program," he said very carefully. "I haven't decided yet." "Of course. But I'm considering it." She met his eyes. "I'm considering a lot of things." The almost smile. The real one, small and surprised and entirely his. "Okay," he said. "Just that. Just okay." The same word he had used months ago at a tea house table when she had told him she was wrong about the ending, and it meant the same thing now that it had meant then, not a conclusion. A beginning. The particular kind that doesn't announce itself loudly, but arrives in the middle of an ordinary Wednesday, or a cold November evening, or a 2 a.m. rainstorm when someone gets into the wrong car, and turns out to be exactly the right one. The story is done, but that feeling you have right now, that specific mix of satisfied and slightly wrecked, sit with it for a second. Because that feeling means something found you. It means a story about a tired doctor in blood-stained scrubs, and a man who didn't know how to ask questions actually reached through a screen and reminded you that the most life-changing things rarely announce themselves. They just show up like a car door already open in the rain. That feeling is why this channel exists. Subscribe, so the next time something like this is waiting, it finds you first.